What is going on, family? Welcome back to DXB Crypto. Hope you are having a fantastic Sunday. Anyway, let's get on with it. Most investors don't really understand how the monetary system works, how they print money, what the consequences are. So in this video, we're going to look at what really matters: Bitcoin dominance and Fed pivot. Of course, we'll talk about some coins, but really the focus right now is, because you are already allocated, you've got your bags in there. Could there be one more crash in the market? Possibly. Smash a like, guys, of course, as always, and let's go. So this was one of the most fascinating insights into the mindset of the Federal Reserve. 60-minute interview, 2025, I think this was like 5 years ago, sorry, just after the pandemic. Jerome Powell did this interview where he's basically answering what the F, how the money flows. Right? Listen to this. It's really, really fascinating.
Simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally. And we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government-guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency, and we distribute that to the Federal Reserve banks.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So that's what you're waiting for. You're waiting for a macro pivot. Now, of course, 30th of July is the very much anticipated Federal Reserve or Fed meeting. And of course, in this meeting right now, currently as it stands, there is no kind of 81.4% think that the rates will be kept the same. So the market is not pricing in any cuts, but that kind of 19.6% is purely because the Federal Reserve chairman-elect, all right, Fed Waller, is very much in the camp that they can cut rates. And of course, your altcoins will not go anywhere. Your altcoins will not go anywhere, okay, unless there is irrational money sloshing around the system. Liquidity is king. Everything else is just noise. So that's why I'm actually giving you this opportunity to look at this. I mean, things are positioning themselves. Aptos has done really well after the ETF, there was an ETF filed. Say it's up 52% over the week. Of course, Fartcoin and a few others, SPX here, 22%. But on the weekly, most of the things you're seeing are for those large caps here. But if you look at the monthly, you can clearly see that the market's still in a massive, massive discount. You've got virtuals at 30% down. You've got other things in there that are ondo 12%. So the top 100 is an indicator. Why am I looking at this? We need this to outperform Bitcoin for a consistent period of time. That's what alt season means ultimately. But why am I calm about the situation? Well, the Fed is telling you that they've printed and they're going to keep printing, and they always print. They create money to get, the US money, monetary system is not based on any tangible, the currency is not based on, they moved from the gold standards after Nixon. Basically, Nixon took them out of the gold standards. So they can infinite money glitch, it's called, right? But why am I actually joyful about what's happening right now? Not because we're in pain, but I'm joyful because I know what is going to happen. They print money, the dollar has to go somewhere. And guess what? There is market participants. That's how the money is created. That's how wealth in the US is made. Mostly globally, these financial markets happen once in every 4 years business cycle. And as a result, Bitcoin dominance tends to collapse at these specific periods. We had this back in the day, of course, and this was repeated again and again and again. Okay, there are periods of Bitcoin dominance drops, but we know right now Bitcoin dominance is in an ascending channel for over 3.5 years, non-stop. And you can see here, what I'm predicting is the 72% level. For those of you that can't really see the chart, I'll just mark it for you so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. This yellow line here is where we think it should peak based on Bitcoin dominance tops since 2019, right? Could we actually come out more? And the more it comes up beyond that is the more the alts will be squeezed. So you have to be prepared for the altcoins to bleed against Bitcoin, but you have to understand your buying value. If you don't understand that, then you're just going to keep knocking your head like a 5-year-old who's I don't know, just an autistic kid, man. You're just going to go bang your head all over the place because you are not understanding and you want instant appreciation of the asset. It's not because one asset is bad. It's not because one asset is overall. There are strong cryptocurrencies, but most of the shit coins tend to behave the same way. And the other thing, of course, you can do is add few strong altcoins, because the market, again, if I show you the monthly or the quarterly, they are down. They are heavily down. All cryptocurrencies, majority of them are still way undervalued, and in an irrational phase, they should come good. Now, this is, of course, BTC versus Bitcoin, or Bitcoin market dominance. Ethereum versus Bitcoin, and Ethereum's market dominance. And you can see here, it has actually gone to a level where it's got to like a 10%, 9%, just under 10%, and now it's crashed back down to about 8.96%. This is, again, a beautiful chart to look at because we are at the bottom of the 2019, the last time we were in these levels, Bitcoin versus Ethereum. This is all the way back, Ethereum dominance at its lowest back in 2019, right? And the highest that it's obviously had was the first few months of existence here. You got, back in 2017 here, it peaked around 30% of market dominance as altcoins. So we need this to be up. We need this to come back up. And that's the only way to actually see if there's going to be a proper progress. Total 2, again, Total 2 is following what the Total 2 always does. And you can clearly see here, we are still in an uptrend, albeit respecting the, it's almost like a channel there for me that it's respecting. So Total 3 as well, 828 billion. This was actually coming down quite a bit, but it has stabilized somewhat. And of course, could we see this under 700 billion? It is a possibility, guys. It is an absolute possibility. Don't rule anything out, but just understand every single chart nowadays looks like this, right? This is what most of the altcoins look like. And of course, no particular altcoin, it doesn't refer to any particular altcoin. But what you're starting to see is whether you hold crypto or not really depends on your your financial situation. Of course, it depends on many things, but overall, it really does depend on the mentality and understanding why, when, and how things are done. We're just, at the end of the day, we're just small guys in a macro picture, swimming along. And as a result, that's why things tend to hurt more, because expectation versus reality. Reality says that, of course, you're not making any progress. Your expectation is that you're going to be a millionaire in few months. And of course, you've been dealt with this hand that is absolutely insane. But I wish people could behave like the Koreans. For example, 27% of Koreans aged 20 to 50 hold crypto, 70% eye more investments in terms of report. And of course, in the Far East, I mean, especially in Korea, they treat, for example, XRP is like a Bitcoin for them. But I wish people can actually adopt this mindset where, you got your 9 to 5 or whatever you do to generate money, and then you buy the assets you want. Understand, before the Fed pivot is where you need to be holding these things. You don't come in the last moment when the Fed pivots, because these things run too hard. They've got millions and millions and trillions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to hide and to disperse around the world, right? To keep the dollar supreme. So that money is going to find its way to you. But unfortunately, the average investor nowadays doesn't last a couple of months, and that is always going to be something that does people's overall confidence in the market. I got a brother who sent me a comment saying he's totally out of crypto. It's done nothing for him. Possibly the worst time to sell, in my opinion, because you don't have the macro events that are going to change your life. Because the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank is telling you, we have printed money. We are going to print money. That's how we do business. This is how we roll, and no one's going to do anything about it. And that's it. That's insane. That is absolutely insane, because once you understand what they're trying to do, the moment that pivot comes, your shitcoin is going to do a 20x, 30x. What are you going to do then? It may last, no guarantees. It may last such a short time. It may not even happen at all. But ultimately, you are in with a fighting chance of securing life-changing gains if you participate in the market. Market participants are always rewarded over time. And no matter what happens, it doesn't even matter what you hold. Sometimes it's all about just being in the market and again, making sure that you're holding strong when it really matters, not coming in late and being late to the party. So I hope this gives you a clarity of what the mentality is. Total 3, again, we could come down to like 826 billion. So it doesn't really matter. For me, what matters to me the most is being consistent, is DCAing when the market is down. When things turn bullish, just sit back and relax. There's no need to FOMO into this. If you look at this weekly chart, for example, of say, everybody thinks they've kind of like missed the boat on say right now. And look at this. Say hasn't even started. Is at its first resistance here at 30 cents. There's such a long way to go for this asset that right now, at least, to the dollar, it seems a very, very lucrative trade once it comes back, consolidates, and of course breaks above a particular level that you're looking for. Some alts are way more challenged, right? So this is, for example, the chart of Delicium AGI. And that's a horrible chart, right? On the weekly, it's done nothing. And again, once it even comes back out, it's got a massive, massive resistance at around this kind of like 8 cents level. It's got that resistance, of course. So, not a lot there. Not a lot to go on by there, which is very, very difficult. Again, this is Manta Network. Manta Network, even if it breaks out, you've got double resistance here at, 52 cents. That's going to be 50 cents will be a monumental level for Manta to clear. Can Manta do that? And then, of course, 50, and then you've obviously got this $1, and then it goes again. The top for this was like $4. Could it do that? Very, very difficult to see that happening right now. And you continue with these, like, for example, Solidius AITech. I did a report on this for the community the other day. And this has been kind of like unbelievable. Look at the sell volume here, right? This is, this red candle here. And that dropped the price down further. Now, of course, right now it's at its absolute knees. And if it can clear, if this can go above 15 cents, right? 16 to 15, around that region, this has an opportunity. Again, you don't want to be wasting money. So I'd be looking to get out, the first bit of resistance. Really, if it goes into price discovery, great. Again, there are several ways to look at these altcoins and think how we can make that absolute killer gains from them. But it's difficult sometimes because, you understand when an asset looks like this, it's very difficult to put trust in it and to kind of like stay in it and DCA and actually believe it's going to happen. And if it does, then you'll probably look at something like this, or maybe, something like that. It could do that, of course, but it has to go clear these levels of resistance before it does that. It is a long way, but I do believe this one will pop off. Potenza Tau, anybody who wants to buy Tau, anybody who's looking into Tau, your opportunity one more time below $300 is coming on its way. I do believe Tau around 250 could be the best opportunity buy of the cycle for the large AI coins. And you can clearly see it does want to head to this level where there are massive, humongous order blocks. So yeah, that could happen one more time, right? RSI got oversold, overbought, and then of course it dipped below again. These RSIs can reverse anytime, but you're looking at the weekly time frame for Potenza Tau. And then of course smaller projects, you got Corpo World here again. The the opportunity is really a risky one. Nevertheless, it is an opportunity for gaming anyway. I mean, if there was gaming opportunity, it would most likely be, things like Beam to absolutely go off first. And then, of course, after Beam, who knows? Ondo actually broke a level that it didn't break for a while. Again, could we see Ondo coming back to these levels, 50, 58, 50 cents? I think this is an interesting level to watch for Ondo, in my opinion. I think Ondo does have the opportunity to kind of come into this price range. It's already almost there anyway. So yeah, that 58 cents, this level, it's more or less, I mean, it's still, you can see it's very much under a huge discount. Level to watch for Ondo would be around that 140, 150 level for the bull market. That will be a massive level of block. This is an order block for selling. And of course, it is going to be resistance at some point once it gets over there. Lastly, let's have a look at Sui. Sui is doing very well. I have done a Sui video this week. And again, Sui on the weekly looks like he wants to consolidate here. Once this RSI kind of bottoms or flips, you're starting to see Sui flip the $5.50 previous ATH into support, and then onwards and upwards from there. Again, I would be buying. Look, these are institutional order blocks, these green buys. These are not lines that I drew. These are institutional order blocks. So these orders will get filled, of course. And again, there's no chance of this. This has been a very massive buy zone. You can see all of the orders that I stacked up here. So I'm expecting this to go on a massive 200% run and flip this into support at $5.50. What am I telling you about Sui? Well, go look at the ecosystem plays. They are absolutely killed. They are down. All right. Anyway, guys, smash a like for the video. We covered a lot. We talked about Jerome Powell, why the move system is going to be flooding with money. I've given you some very good charts as to where I see a lot of support resistance, why I'm so calm, and I've never been calmer after being absolutely battered for so long. That is because every day you go, you learn to manage your excitement. And of course, until they print money, and once they print that irrational money into risk assets and the Fed pivots, then of course, there's no need to panic because Bitcoin's sitting at 107, and we don't just go into a bear market like that without ETH having to smash its all-time high at the very least in a time when BlackRock is buying. All right, gave you a lot there, guys. Share this video with your loved ones. Again, every investor should better themselves. Every investor should learn from previous mistakes. For example, look at Kaspa here. Kaspa gets a red block here, sold off. It gets another red block here. Honestly, it's just so scary. It's unbelievable. Look at this. And again, people were buying. Crypto Galaxy was selling this at the 25 cent level, right? The 20 cent level. Look, it's, bam. And then it comes up to here, and then massive sell order. And you can see here, it had to come all the way down. Again, there is a potential opportunity that this is the bottom. But if it doesn't hold these levels, I can see it sliding down a bit more. But it is too late, in my opinion. I think this was the Kaspa bottom around that 5 cent level. and hopefully it sticks around there. On the weekly, you can see the RSI, it's literally approaching its sort of bottom here. So look, you know, emotionless investment, and when things are doing this, you know, the problem that we've had in the past is, you know, we would buy into this, for example. I know we got into Kaspa so early, but you don't buy into these tops here. These are significantly powerful tops, and heavy buying pressure initially came in here, and you can see this green band that allowed Kaspa to outperform Bitcoin ridiculously. So hopefully ETH BTC bottom, still got a little bit more to go in my opinion. And of course, if you look at the historical levels of ETH BTC, I do believe we are going to hit the bottom around this ratio over here, right? And that's why you see a massive green kind of green support band, you know, which is actually people buying more ETH than Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin ETH dominance going up slightly in ETH's favor. And of course, that eventually needs to get up above the 0.2 level, the 0.4 level, which is going to be tough, and then the 0.5 level. So ETH BTC is also something we need to watch. Anyway, guys, smash a like. Don't throw your toys out of the pram. Don't get emotionally scarred by this. Hold it long enough. And the analogy that I give you is, have you ever been in a losing trade and became disillusioned with it to the point where you just said, F it, you know, if I get liquidated, so be it. And then that trade turns around and you don't understand the reasons why it turned around, and now you're in profit. This is way more comfortable than futures trading, guys. Spot over time pays. And after a whole 4 years of accumulation, I think this is the time and place where we go absolutely nuts. All right? Look after your loved ones. There's more important things in life. Smash a like, and I'll catch you on the next one.